Listen, you can make fun of me all you want. I've been doing this for my whole career. You know, I was on a little bit of delay on stuff. Sometimes there was a period of time when it was all too much, like the 80s. Everything was too much. And they asked for that sound, by the way. Regardless of my first day of using my Bradshaw rig in that old Starlix video where I have all the effects turned on. Sounds like a freaking kazoo. And, you know, I was hung over that day, like way back when, you know. You know, with my use of effects these days, I used to have all that stuff, you know what I mean? That was the 80s and that was even the early 90s. But I found traveling, it's you know, taking all this stuff is really super expensive, eh? Bradshaw makes incredible stuff. I still have it. But I've had to use a small pedal board with just stop boxes. And I find that it's simplified my sound, makes it easier for me on the road, and things don't usually, I'm not worried about digital equipment traveling and getting jacked around. So I keep it simple. If something breaks, I can just pull it off and put another one on. You know what I mean? If I'm in New Zealand and I can't get anybody, you know, I need to be able to do that. So that's the only reason I really switched. Plus, I wanted to become more of a minimalist, as I was known for all that crap. Sure, I use a little bit of delay on that. Why not? You know, hey, you know, I'm not trying to dazzle you with my, 2022 techniques. You know what I mean? Because it's changed a lot. The way people hold the guitar, what they learn first, is not what I learned. Because that was as good as you had to be. I mean, if I could play. At 11 years old, people thought I was Hendrix, you know, because I could go. And I was 11 years old, you know. It was nowadays that's not abnormal to have you young and have a band. Back in the 60s, it was like, where did you guys come from? You know what I mean? Nobody saw 11-year-old kids in a band that could actually play at all, you know. So that was like, you know, like I said, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and Neanderthal man was the head of the record companies back then. Of course, that's always been. My secret to my pedals is there's no secret to my pedals. It's like the same stuff you guys use. You find a great distortion pedal or a great delay pedal or a great compressor or whatever you like to use, or the myriad of different modulation effects, you say. You know what I mean? I mean, they have these boxes where everything's built in. I mean, you know, some people hate effects. They just want to go plug dry as a bone. I've always like dug cats like, you know, Dave Gilmour and Joe Walsh is where I got mine. Like I love the spread of having some of that depth. But now I put it in, when I plug that kind of stuff in, I put it in the effects loop. So you always have your dry sound here, and with a stereo setup, it just puts a little bit of shimmer on it. Because in a big room, you don't want to use all this crap because it'll get lost if you try to play anything articulate or quick. It'll just sound like, you know, you can practice your ass off, it doesn't mean anything. That's why super shred rarely works in a huge arena. I mean, you got guys like Satch and Vi and Eddie, God bless his soul, but, you know, generally, you know, you wouldn't see cats like, you know, Alan Holdsworth, God bless his soul, selling out the arena. You know what I mean? You need to see that up close to understand it and get it. And there ain't never going to be anybody like Alan Holdsworth. He's one of the sweetest men alive, one of the greatest of all time, so... You know, I've got to be friends with all my heroes, just about, you know, the ones that are alive still anyway. And I've gotten to see it all up close, and all the different styles, because I'm not just a rock guy that just listens to rock and roll. I mean, I can listen to jazz players. I love the new players that are some of the younger than me anyway. These cats you see on the internet that are just dazzling. Women, and there's this girl, Laura Basilio, who's absolutely incredible. And Jennifer Batten, you know what I mean? She's like old school, but also brilliant, you know what I mean? And, you know, so like I love the fact that women, Nita Strauss, people like this are picking up the guitar and killing it. I remember Lita Ford, old friend. She was one of the first ever. And she still plays great, you know? I mean, I haven't seen her in a long time, but I mean, we were friends, you know? And, you know, I'm really impressed by that. It's not like, oh, she's good for a girl. It's like, no, she's just fucking good. You know what I mean? Skin... Your sex has nothing to do with your playing ability. It used to be, oh, girls can't play drums or girls can't play guitar. When I was a kid, girls didn't. Now girls get out of bed going, I'm going to do that. I can do that every bit as good as any guy, if not better. And they're proving that right. So God bless you girls out there. I saw a young Japanese girl playing on it. It was just unbelievable, like Steve Vai stuff. I'm going, what's my point anymore? I'm just a 63-year-old guy. I'm going, thank God I'm the old guy now, you know?
keyboards?
Well, first off, I love keyboards. I play a little bit as a songwriter, you know what I mean? I'm not like, Herbie Hancock or nothing like that, but I've always been around great keyboard players. Steve Carl, David Page, David Foster, great filling games. And then, I played with Herbie. I played with, the greatest of Stevie Wonder and people like that, which everybody plays different, you know what I mean? And I like the fullness. I remember Joe Walsh's band, Barnstorm, had 2 keyboard players, and he's one of my favorite artists and also a dear friend. But I thought that sound with a guitar on top of it was great. I never felt like threatened by it because we always wrote stuff to make room for everybody. It's like you get your time to shine, I get mine, and then you get yours. You know what I mean? And that's the way I always feel comfortable with lots of keyboard players.
Never had a problem.
No, I love it. I play keyboards on this stuff myself sometimes. I think when we make the records and when we come up with the original parts, the arrangements fall into place with everybody finding their niche sonically as well as part-wise to leave room for everybody to breathe. Yeah, it is something to think about, but after being in a band for almost 45 years and longer if you count high school, you get to know where your place is. You know what it is. And the parts that we play together, that's one thing, and then somebody soloing, you lay back, these are just common sense things you learn by instinct over the years. Listen sometimes before you play. That's my advice. Find a part that works instead of playing against somebody. Find another part that complements it and leave space, and then when it's time for you to step on the gas and play your ass off. Oh shit, man, it's not always that way, but when I was doing it every day back in the day before we had 100 million tracks on your computer to do this, so I was playing on 24-track machines and people would make a whole album on 24 tracks. And you had to be very careful how many tracks you used, and usually if you got a guitar solo or something, they save it for last because they need all the tracks to comp vocals and stuff. It was a very different era back then. You had to perform. If you weren't good enough to do that in 1 or 2 takes, you didn't get the calls anymore. There's another guy. So I knew going in that I had to be able to step up and do that because my heroes were Carlton Rittenauer, Graydon, Dean Parks, the greats of the studios, and Tommy Tedesco before that, but I never did really movie dates per se. My reading wasn't that good. You had to be like, that's a whole other, I can read, but come on. With 80 people in the room and you have a classical piece written for you and there's silence and 80 people looking at you, you get 2 takes. That's a different kind of pressure than a record, Yeah, and the solos, I just show up and play. Most of the time they just want me to play whatever I want to hear. And I knew that they didn't want to hear me going, you play for the song. If it's a pop song, the pop artist, you play off the melody, or you find something that's really cool and sings over it rather than let me show you how, on my own records I can do whatever I want, you know what I mean? But I try to be tasteful, you don't always got to show everybody how big your dick is, you know what I mean? You gotta save a little bit for surprise, if you will. Didn't used to know anything. Sometimes I didn't know what kind of music I was going to play, who I was going to play with. There was no demos and machines and stuff to me. I learned how to be a session player being a demo guy, where you'd get $20 a tune to play on some singer-songwriter's demos to get a song cut. And I got to cut my teeth and make mistakes and stuff in that arena before I was brought up to the big leagues by Jeff Porcaro and David Page and, my affiliation with the Porcaro family and all the rest of it, Did David Page, and these are the people that helped me get my first shots. And then I met Larry Carlton and Lee Rittenauer and these guys, and Jake Radin was my mentor and still one of my best friends and my son Trevor's godfather. He really mentored me on what kind of gear. Make sure you have this gear, man. Make sure you do. He turned me on to all his work and stuff. But now, unfortunately, the studio musician thing is dead. There's not me. There's a handful of 3 or 4 guys that do all the stuff from their home studios. I don't have a home studio. I like to separate home and work because I still have a couple little kids as well as 2 grown. It's tough because there's not really, it exists, but it's harder than ever to get into the small few gigs that there are. And the guys that have them ain't giving them up. They now it's like they have to have a studio at home with all their stuff set up, and they have to share files and have their Skype or FaceTime set up. and you send them a bunch of stuff, and it's not the same thing as being in the room, capturing the excitement of a rhythm section take where everybody plays together and magic happens. You know, now everything, the magic is programmed, and sometimes it sounds like it. It doesn't, you know, like there's no great long jams and the end fades anymore. When we used to think, okay, well, we got it, they got the fade, now we'll just jam. That's the take, let's just have fun, and we just jam out. Well, that was what Rosanna was, you know, the end. I mean, that was not the, we were supposed to end on dun 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 end, right? And Jeff went blaff, dum, 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 and Paige was right there with him, and we just dove into the second line thing, and it was a total accident. At the end of it, we went, "Did you get that, man?" And Al Schmidt goes, "Yep," and it was the second time we ever played the song. Because we never rehearsed to go in the studio. We go, "Who's got a song today?" And then write out a quick little chord chart, or remember it, learn it, and play it a couple times. Jeff would always get it in 1 or 2 takes, so even if we screwed up, we could fix it. You know, so that was the way we made records. Some guys rehearsed for months to do this. It's just, we as studio players we were like, well, we capture all the best stuff when we first play it. Let's not wear it out at rehearsal. Sometimes you play your best stuff at the rehearsal and you got nothing left for the gig. It's like people who practice way too hard before the gig, and they play great backstage, and they get on stage and they're stiff, and they just all of a sudden, it's better sometimes just to, you know, sure, warm up a little bit, but don't save all your best licks for the backstage, you know what I mean? Warm up, stretch out, but don't overdo it. Save it for the gig, or the take on the recording that you want to do at home or something, you know?